The small coastal town of Havenport was a place where the sea whispered secrets to those who listened. Nestled between jagged cliffs and a restless ocean, its moody skies and salt-laced winds painted a picture of wild beauty and quiet isolation. The waves crashed relentlessly against the shore, a constant murmur that seemed to echo the town's unspoken stories. For Emma Harper, a 32-year-old artist fleeing a fractured past, Havenport was more than a refuge. It was a blank canvas, a chance to repaint her life after a devastating breakup. Emma had arrived with little more than a suitcase, a sketchbook, and a heart still bruised from betrayal. Her ex-fiancé's infidelity had shattered her trust, and the city she'd once called home now felt like a cage of memories. Havenport offered solitude and simplicity. A weathered cottage perched above the bay, its creaking beams and peeling paint a mirror to her own weariness. She spent her days sketching the coastline the way the light danced on the water, the shadows that clung to the cliff sand, her nights wandering the cobblestone streets, where the air carried the mingled scents of seaweed and wood smoke. The townsfolk were warm but reserved, their nods and half-smiles hinting at a tight-knit community bound by history. Emma didn't mind. She wasn't here to belong, only to heal. That is, until she met Jack Callahan. It was a chilly evening at the town's weekly market, where stalls brimmed with fresh fish and handmade trinkets. Jack stood behind a table piled with cod and mackerel, his sun-bleached hair tasseled by the wind, his deep blue eyes catching hers across the crowd. He was a fisherman, rugged and quiet, with hands scarred from years of battling the sea. There was a gentleness to him, a stillness that felt like an anchor in Havenport's stormy embrace. "You're new here," he said, wrapping a parcel of fish in brown paper and handing it to her. His voice was low, steady, like the tide. Emma tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, offering a shy smile. "That obvious?" "Small town," Jack replied, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "You stand out, in a good way." Their conversation stretched beyond the market, spilling into walks along the shore and late-night talks by the docks. Jack showed her the hidden coves only locals knew, places where the sea carved secrets into the rock. Emma found herself laughing again, her guarded heart softening with every shared glance. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, a connection that might mend what had been broken. But Havenport had a way of unearthing truths, whether you sought them or not. One crisp morning, while prying up a loose floorboard in her cottage's attic, Emma discovered something unexpected. An old map, its edges frayed and ink faded, wrapped in brittle oilcloth. The paper bore cryptic symbols and a jagged outline of the coast, with an X marking a spot near a cove. Curiosity ignited her artist's soul, and she spent days deciphering it, her fingers tracing lines that whispered of adventure. The map led her to a hidden inlet, revealed only at low tide. There, buried in the sand beneath an overhang of rock, she found a rusted chest. Her pulse raced as she forced it open, revealing a trove of treasures, pearl necklaces, gold brooches, and a silver locket cradling a faded photograph of a stern-faced woman. Tucked among the jewelry were documents, letters, and deeds, some stamped with the name Callahan. Callahan, Jack's last name. The realization hit her like a wave. What was this chest, and why had it been hidden? That night, Emma resolved to confront Jack. She needed to understand the treasure's significance and to confess the feelings she could no longer ignore. But as she approached the docks where his boat bobbed in the dark water, she froze. There, under the flickering glow of a lantern, stood Sarah Callahan, Jack's wife, Havenport's poised and powerful mare locked in a heated argument with a stranger. Sarah's usual elegance was gone, replaced by a raw, unguarded fury. The man, wiry and sharp-eyed, gestured toward the sea, his voice a harsh whisper Emma couldn't fully catch. Then, with a sudden motion, he thrust a small wrapped package into Sarah's hands. She clutched it tightly, her knuckles white. "You don't understand what's at stake," Sarah snapped, her voice cutting through the night as she yanked her arm free from his grasp. Emma ducked behind a stack of crates, her breath shallow, her mind reeling. Jack had never mentioned a wife, let alone the town's mayor. Had he lied to her? And what was Sarah hiding? The treasure, the argument, the packagite, all swirled together, a tangle of secrets threatening to pull Emma under. As the man stormed off into the shadows, Sarah lingered, staring out at the sea with an expression Emma couldn't read: anger, fear, or something darker? The weight of the chest's contents pressed against Emma's thoughts, mingling with the sting of Jack's deception. She had come to Havenport to escape betrayal, but now it seemed to have followed her, woven into the very fabric of this windswept town. What was Sarah involved in? And how deep did Jack's secrets run? The cold sea breeze stung Emma's skin as she crouched behind the crates, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. Ahead, Sarah Callahan's silhouette stood out against the flickering lantern light, her posture stiff as she gazed at the dark, restless waves. In her hands, she held a small package, her fingers trembling as she quickly hid it inside her coat. Emma's thoughts churned. Jack had never mentioned a wife or not a whisper of being married. The sting of betrayal cut deep, reminding her of old wounds she'd tried to bury. But this wasn't just about Jack's deception. Something larger loomed, connected to the chest Emma had discovered in her attic, and the name etched on its contents: Callahan. She wanted to confront Sarah right then, but instinct told her to wait. Instead, Emma slipped away from the docks, her steps hushed on the wet cobblestones. The sleeping town glowed faintly under the moonlight, but her mind buzzed with questions. She needed to face Jack and demand the truth about his marriage and the treasure. First, though, she had to unravel the chest's secrets. At her cottage, Emma laid out the chest's contents on her kitchen table. The jewelry shimmered faintly, but the documents held her focus. Aged letters, fragile and yellowed, described a shipwrecker merchant vessel swallowed by a storm over 100 years ago. Deeds listed long-dead Callahans as owners of salvaged land and cargo. Among them, a newer note stood out, its ink bold and rushed. "The locket is the key. Don't let them find it. The truth must stay buried." Emma's fingers traced the silver locket from the chest. She clicked it open, peering at the stern-faced woman in the faded photograph. On the back, in fine script, was written, "Eleanor Callahan, 1892. Who was Eleanor, and what truth was worth hiding? The next morning, Emma visited Agnes, the town's elderly historian, at the small museum packed with nautical artifacts and old records. When Emma mentioned the chest, Agnes's eyes lit up with recognition. "The Callahan wreck," Agnes murmured reverently. "A grim story. The ship sank in 1892, taking the family's fortune with it. Some say treasures were recovered and stashed away. The Callahans were once powerful here, but their wealth dwindled. Folks whisper they're still hunting for what was lost." Emma's pulse raced. What about Eleanor Callahan? Agnes's face shadowed. Eleanor was the matriarch, tough as nails. She survived the wreck, but her husband didn't. Afterward, she shut herself off, fixated on guarding the family's legacy. Rumors claim she hid something big, something that could ruin the Callahans if it surfaced. "What kind of something?" Emma pressed. Agnes shrugged. "No one knows exactly, but they say she passed the secret to her kin, swearing them to keep it buried." Emma left with her mind spinning. The treasure wasn't just history. It unlocked a scandal the Callahans, maybe even Sarah, fought to conceal. But how did Jack fit in? And why hide his marriage? That evening, Emma found Jack at the harbour, repairing nets on his boat. The sunset painted the water gold, but a chill gripped her as she approached. "Jack," she said firmly, masking her inner storm. He looked up, his smile fading at her serious tone. "Emma, what's wrong?" She steadied herself. "Why didn't you tell me you're married?" Jack froze, the net slipping from his hands. Silence hung heavy before he spoke, his voice quiet with regret. "It's complicated, Emma. Sarah and we've been apart for years. Separate lives, just not on paper. I didn't think it mattered?" Emma cut in, anger rising. "You let me believe in us, Jack. You let me hope." He stepped nearer, his eyes desperate. "There is an us. I've never felt this with anyone, not even Sarah. But I was scared you'd walk away if you knew." Her heart twisted, caught between affection and hurt. "And the chest, Jack? The one in my attic? Full of your family's secrets. What are you hiding?" His face went white. "You found it? How?" "Under the floorboards. A map, letters, a locket. Agnes told me about the wreck, about Eleanor. What's the truth that must stay buried?" Jack raked a hand through his hair, torn. "It's a family thing, Emma. Kept quiet for generations. It's not mine to share." "Not yours?" Emma snapped, frustration spilling over. "I'm tangled in this, Jack. I saw Sarah at the docks last night, meeting some man, trading packages. She looked scared. What's she into? How's it tied to the treasure? Jack's eyes widened. You saw her? With who? A stranger? I don't know. He handed her something. Jack swore, gripping the boat's railing. This is bad. Sarah's been off lately secretive. I thought it was just her usual games, but if she's dealing with outsiders... He stopped, jaw tight. Emma softened, worry overtaking her anger. Jack, what's happening? Tell me. He faced her, his gaze heavy. The Callahan legacy isn't just money, Emma. There's a dark side. Eleanor didn't just hide treasure, she hid evidence. Proof of a crime that could ruin our name. If it leaks, it's not just Sarah's career, it'll shatter this town. Emma's breath hitched. What crime? Before Jack could reply, a shout rang from the shore. A young boy raced toward them, panting. Mr. Callahan! Your wife, she's in trouble! Fire at the town hall! Jack paled and vaulted off the boat, Emma trailing him. As they reached the square, smoke stung their noses. Flames danced in the town hall's windows, and a frightened crowd milled about. Sarah stood at the edge, her coat charred, clutching the scorched package from the docks. Her eyes were wild as she lurched toward Jack. It's gone, Jack. The evidence, it's all gone. But as the fire roared, Emma caught a fleeting look on Sarah's face relief, swiftly hidden by distress. Then it clicked. The fire was no accident. Sarah had started it. What was she burning? And what would she do next to bury her secrets? The acrid smell of smoke hung heavy in the air as Emma and Jack sprinted toward the town hall. Flames licked at the building's wooden frame, casting an eerie glow over the gathered crowd. Townspeople shouted and pointed, their faces etched with worry and confusion. Sarah! Jack called out, spotting his wife near the edge of the chaos. She turned, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and something else Emma couldn't quite place. Jack, thank God you're here, Sarah said, her voice trembling. She clutched a scorched package tightly to her chest. What happened? Jack demanded, his tone a mix of concern and suspicion. I don't know, Sarah replied, her gaze darting around nervously. I was working late, and suddenly there was smoke everywhere. I barely made it out. Emma watched Sarah closely, noting the way her hands shook and how she avoided eye contact. Something didn't add up. The fire seemed too convenient, too perfectly timed to destroy whatever evidence Sarah might be hiding. As the volunteer firefighters battled the blaze, Emma slipped away from the crowd. Her artist's eye caught a glint of metal near the town hall's entrance. She knelt down and picked up a partially melted key, its intricate design matching the one on the mysterious chest she'd found in her attic. Her heart raced. This key was a link perhaps between the fire and the Callahan family's secrets. But how? Determined to find answers, Emma decided to visit Agnes, the elderly town historian, again. Agnes might know more about the key and its significance. At the museum, Agnes examined the key with a furrowed brow. This is a Callahan family crest, she said, pointing to the ornate C engraved on the key's bow. It likely opens a lockbox or a safe belonging to the family. Emma's mind whirled. If the key was at the town hall, did that mean there was a safe or lockbox there containing more secrets? I need to get back to the town hall, Emma said, her voice urgent. There might be something important there. Be careful, dear, Agnes warned. The Callahans have guarded their secrets fiercely for generations. Uncovering them could be dangerous. Emma nodded, but her resolve was unshakable. She had to know the truth not just for herself, but for Jack and the entire town. Back at the town hall, the fire was finally under control, but the building was a charred husk. Emma slipped past the caution tape, her eyes scanning the debris for any sign of a safe or lockbox. In the mayor's office, she found what she was looking for. A small, fire-damaged safe hidden behind a portrait of Eleanor Callahan. The key fit perfectly, and with a soft click, the safe opened. Inside, Emma found a stack of old letters and a leather-bound journal. She quickly skimmed the letters, her breath catching as she read about a forbidden love affair between Eleanor Callahan and a man who wasn't her husband. The journal, written in Eleanor's elegant hand, detailed the affair and the birth of a child raised as a Callahan, but whose true parentage was a closely guarded secret. Emma's hands trembled as she realized the implications. If this secret were exposed, it could shatter the Callahan family's reputation and their political power in Havenport. But there was more. Tucked between the journal's pages was a recent note, written in Sarah's unmistakable script. "The truth must stay buried, for the sake of our future." Emma's blood ran cold. Sarah was willing to go to any lengths to protect her family's legacy, even if it meant destroying evidence and putting lives at risk. As she stood there, absorbing the weight of her discovery, a shadow fell across the doorway. Emma looked up to see Sarah standing there, her face a mask of fury and desperation. "You shouldn't have come here, Emma," Sarah said, her voice low and menacing. "Some secrets are meant to stay hidden." Emma took a step back, her heart pounding. "Sarah, I." But before she could finish, Sarah lunged forward, grabbing a heavy bookend from the desk. Emma dodged, but the edge of the bookend grazed her temple, sending her sprawling to the floor. As darkness closed in, Emma's last thought was of Jack and the danger he might be in if Sarah was willing to kill to keep her secrets. The world swam in and out of focus as Emma's senses slowly returned. Her head throbbed, and the metallic taste of blood lingered on her tongue. She blinked against the dim light, her vision clearing to reveal a small, musty room. The air was thick with the scent of salt and damp wood, and the faint sound of waves crashing against the shore echoed in the distance. She was no longer in the town hall. Emma tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through her temple, forcing her to lie back down. She was on a narrow cot, her wrists bound loosely with rope. Panic surged through her as she realized she'd been taken likely by Serato keep her from revealing what she'd discovered. The room was bare, save for a few crates and fishing nets strewn about. A single grimy window let in a sliver of moonlight, casting eerie shadows on the walls. It looked like an old fisherman's shack, long abandoned. Emma twisted her wrists, working at the knots until the rope loosened enough for her to slip free. Rubbing her sore wrists, she stood shakily and crept to the door. It was locked from the outside. Desperation clawed at her as she searched the room for something to help her escape. Her eyes landed on a rusted crowbar leaning against the wall. She grabbed it and wedged it into the doorframe, prying with all her strength until the wood splintered and the door creaked open. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and bracing. She stumbled out onto a rocky ledge overlooking the sea. The shack was perched on a cliff, hidden from the town by a thick copse of trees. The path back to Havenport was treacherous, but Emma had no choice. She had to find Jack and warn him about Sarah's ruthlessness. As she made her way down the winding trail, her thoughts churned. Sarah was willing to kill to protect her family's secrets, but what exactly was she hiding? The journal had revealed Eleanor Callahan's affair and the child born out of wedlock. But was there more? And how did the treasure tie into it all? Meanwhile, in Havenport, Jack was frantic. Emma had vanished after the fire, and no one had seen her since. He'd searched the town hall's ruins, the docks, even her cottage, but there was no trace of her. Dread settled in his gut like a stone. As he stood on the pier, staring out at the dark sea, a voice called out from behind him, "Jack." He turned to see his estranged wife, Sarah, approaching. Her face was pale, her usual composure frayed at the edges. "Have you seen Emma?" Jack asked, his voice tight with worry. Sarah shook her head, but her eyes flickered with something guilt, perhaps. "No, I haven't. I thought she might be with you." Jack's jaw clenched. He knew Sarah was hiding something. He could feel it. "What's going on, Sarah? First the fire, now Emma's missing. This isn't a coincidence." Sarah's gaze hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about. The fire was an accident, and Emma probably just left town. She's not one of us, Jack. She doesn't belong here." But Jack wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "I know about the journal, Sarah, the one you tried to destroy. Emma found it before the fire." Sarah's face went ashen. "You don't understand, Jack. That journal could ruin everything our family, my career, the entire town. Some secrets are better left buried." Jack's eyes narrowed. "What else are you hiding? What's so dangerous that you'd risk everything to keep it quiet?" Sarah hesitated, then clamped her mouth shut. "It's for your own good, Jack. Trust me." But trust was the last thing Jack felt. He turned away, determined to find Emma before Sarah did something worse. Back on the cliffs, Emma had made it to town. Her legs ached, and her head still throbbed, but she pushed through the pain. She needed to get to Agnes, the historian, who might know more about the Callahan family's secrets. At the museum, Agnes was closing up when Emma burst in, breathless and disheveled. "Emma, what happened to you?" Agnes exclaimed, rushing to her side. "There's no time," Emma gasped. "I need to know more about the Callahan family, about Eleanor and the child from her affair. Is there anything else? Something that could explain why Sarah's so desperate?" Agnes's face grew grave. "There's a rumor," she said slowly. "They say the child born from Eleanor's affair wasn't just any child, it was the true heir to the Callahan fortune. But to protect the family's name, Eleanor raised the child as her husband's, even though he wasn't." Emma's eyes widened. "So the current Callahan line might not be the legitimate heirs?" Agnes nodded. "If that secret got out, it could invalidate their claim to the family's wealth and influence." Emma's mind reeled. No wonder Sarah was so desperate. But there was still something missing, something tied to the treasure. She pulled the silver locket from her pocket. "This belonged to Eleanor. There's an inscription, 'To my beloved, may our secret rest with the tides.'" Agnes took the locket and pressed a small catch, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a tiny, folded map similar to the one Emma had found, but this one marked a cave beneath the cliffs, accessible only at low tide. "The true treasure," Agnes whispered. "Not just gold, but proof of the affair letters, maybe a confession." Emma's pulse quickened. "I have to get to that cave before the tide comes back in." "Be careful," Agnes warned. "Sarah's not the only one who wants this secret buried." Emma nodded and hurried toward the cliffs, the map clutched tightly in her hand. But as she reached the trailhead, a figure stepped out of the shadows, the stranger from the docks she'd seen arguing with Sarah. His sharp eyes glinted, and a cruel smile twisted his lips. "Going somewhere, Miss Harper?" he sneered. "Let's chat about what you've been digging up." Emma's heart pounded as he advanced. She was alone and unarmed. But then a voice rang out. "Leave her alone." Jack emerged from the darkness, lunging at the stranger. They grappled, fists flying, until the stranger pulled a knife. Emma screamed, but Jack twisted his wrist, sending the blade clattering away. With a final shove, Jack knocked him unconscious. "Jack," Emma breathed, rushing to his side. "Are you okay?" He nodded, panting. "Who is he?" "I don't know," Emma said, "but he's working with Sarah. I saw them together." Jack's face darkened. "We need to get to that cave. Whatever's there, it's the key." They hurried down to the beach, the tide lapping at their feet. The cave loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Inside, Emma's flashlight revealed a small alcove with a chest adorned with the Callahan crest. She opened it, trembling. Inside were letters and a birth certificate. Father, Thomas Marlowe. Mother, Eleanor Callahan. "Thomas Marlowe," Jack murmured. "A fisherman, not a Callahan." "This proves it," Emma whispered. "The Callahan line is based on a lie." But a chilling voice interrupted them. "You should have left it alone, Emma." Sarah stood at the cave's entrance, a gun in her hand, aimed at them. Jack stepped in front of Emma. "Sarah, don't. It's over." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "It's never over. The Callahan name, my future, it all hangs by a thread. I won't let you unravel it." "Sarah, please," Emma pleaded. But Sarah's eyes were cold. As her finger tightened on the trigger, the cave rumbled. Water surged in, the tide rising fast. Jack lunged, knocking the gun away. It sank into the water. "Run!" Jack shouted, grabbing Emma's hand. They bolted for the exit, Sarah scrambling after them, but a massive wave crashed in, sweeping them off their feet and pulling them under. The last thing Emma saw was Sarah's furious face as the sea swallowed them all. The sea was relentless, its icy grip dragging Emma under. She fought against the current, her lungs burning as she kicked toward the surface. Darkness swirled around her, the roar of the waves drowning out all other sounds. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, a hand grabbed hers, Jack's. With a final, desperate surge, they broke through the surface, gasping for air. The tide had spit them out onto a narrow strip of beach, the cave's mouth now submerged beneath the churning water. Emma coughed, spitting out salt water, her body trembling from the cold and adrenaline. Jack pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "Are you okay?" he rasped, his voice hoarse. Emma nodded, though her heart still raced. "Where's Sarah?" Jack's face tightened as he scanned the shoreline. There was no sign of her. The sea took her, he said quietly. A pang of sorrow pierced Emma's chest. Despite everything, Sarah had been a part of Jack's life, and her loss would leave a mark on Havenport. But there was no time to mourn, not yet. They had to get back to town and reveal the truth before more damage was done. As they staggered up the cliff path, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world that felt both fragile and renewed. Back in Havenport, the town was already buzzing with news of the fire and the missing mayor. Emma and Jack made their way to the town square, where a crowd had gathered. Faces turned toward them, eyes wide with shock and curiosity. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "There's something you all need to know," he began. "About my family, about Sarah, and about the secrets we've kept for too long." He recounted the story of Eleanor Callahan's affair, the hidden child, and the treasure that wasn't just gold, but a legacy of lies. Emma stood beside him, holding the birth certificate and letters they'd salvaged from the cave. The evidence was clear. The Callahan line, as the town had known it, was built on a falsehood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some looked betrayed, others disbelieving. But as Jack spoke, a strange calm settled over him. For the first time, he wasn't bound by the weight of his family's past. "The Callahan name doesn't belong to me or Sarah," Jack said. "It belongs to the descendants of Thomas Marlowe, a fisherman who loved Eleanor but was erased from history." A murmur spread through the crowd. Then, from the back, an elderly man stepped forward, Thomas Marlowe's great-grandson, now in his 70s. He'd lived quietly in Havenport all his life, unaware of his true heritage. "Is it true?" the man asked, his voice trembling. Jack nodded. "You're the rightful heir to whatever's left of the Callahan estate. It's time to set things right." The man's eyes filled with tears, and the crowd erupted into chatter. The revelation would change Havenport forever, but it also offered a chance for Hellinger Way to move beyond the secrets that had festered for generations. As the townspeople dispersed, Emma turned to Jack. "What about Sarah?" she asked softly. Jack's gaze drifted toward the sea. "They'll search for her, but the tide was strong. She might be gone." Emma squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, Jack." He shook his head. "She made her choices. I just wish it hadn't ended like this." In the days that followed, Havenport began to rebuild. The town hall was repaired, and the Callahan estate was quietly transferred to Thomas Marlowe's descendants. The treasure from the chest was donated to the museum, a symbol of the town's history, both its triumphs and its mistakes. Emma, too, found herself at a crossroads. She had come to Havenport to escape her past, but instead, she'd uncovered a future. Her art flourished, inspired by the wild beauty of the coast and the resilience of its people. And in Jack, she'd found a partner who understood the scars of betrayal, but chose to build something new. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma and Jack stood on the cliffs, watching the waves crash against the shore. "Do you think we'll ever know what really happened to Sarah?" Emma asked. Jack sighed. "Maybe not. The sea keeps its secrets." Emma leaned into him, her heart steady. "Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but not all of them." Jack smiled, his arm tightening around her. "We've unearthed enough for one lifetime." As they stood there, a figure emerged from the Shadoza woman, drenched and shivering, her eyes hollow. "Sarah!" Emma gasped, and Jack tensed beside her. "Sarah?" Sarah's voice was a whisper, raw and broken. "I couldn't let it end like this. I had to come back." Jack stepped forward, his face a mix of relief and wariness. "You're alive!" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Jack, for everything. I was wrong about the secrets, about us. I see that now." Emma watched as Jack hesitated, then extended a hand to his wife. "It's not too late to make things right." Sarah took his hand, her grip trembling. "I want to try." In that moment, Emma realized that Havenport's story wasn't just about uncovering the past, it was about choosing how to move forward. Sarah's return was a chance for redemption, not just for her, but for the entire town. As the three of them stood on the cliffs, the sea whispered below, its secrets now shared with the wind. The tides had turned, and with them, the promise of a new beginning.